The ballroom shimmered under the glow of golden chandeliers, every corner dressed in luxury. Soft music floated through the air, blending with the quiet hum of anticipation. At the center of the grand hall stood a man of wealth and influence, his tailored suit and commanding presence a reminder of the life he had built. Beside him was his only son, a young boy dressed in an immaculate black tuxedo, his eyes scanning the room with both curiosity and uncertainty. Before them stood a line of stunning women, models from across the world, each dressed in elegant gowns that caught the light with every movement. They smiled with practiced grace, their beauty undeniable, their posture perfect. Every detail, from the glimmer of their jewelry to the confidence in their eyes, seemed to echo the father's unspoken ideals. The father leaned slightly toward his son, his voice low but firm. "Choose your mother wisely, my boy," he said, his gaze fixed ahead. "Beauty and status will shape your future." The words carried both advice and expectation, as though the boy's decision was not just about family, but about maintaining the image and legacy of their name. Around them, guests watched silently, their eyes darting between father and son, waiting for the choice to be made. The boy's small hands tightened at his sides, his young mind turning over the weight of the moment. Somewhere in the air, beyond the glitter and glamour, lingered a question he wasn't sure anyone else in the room was asking. Away from the center of the ballroom's glamour, in the far corner near the refreshments table, a young maid moved quietly through the crowd. She wore no glittering gown, only a crisp uniform slightly worn at the seams, her hair tied back neatly. While the models posed under the chandeliers, she kept her focus on her work, refilling glasses, arranging plates, and making sure every guest felt attended to. She didn't seek attention, and perhaps that was why the boy's eyes found her. Her presence was different, calm, unpolished, and real. There was no performance in her smile, no calculated charm, only a quiet warmth that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her. As she poured a drink for an elderly guest, the man's cane slipped from his grasp. Without hesitation, she knelt, picked it up gently, and made sure he was steady on his feet. The gesture was so natural it barely drew notice from the crowd, but to the boy watching, it felt like the most beautiful thing in the room. The father, focused on the models, didn't see his son's gaze wander. But in that moment, the boy wasn't comparing dresses or jewels, he was comparing hearts. Something about the maid's kindness stirred a feeling he couldn't yet name, but instinctively understood. She was not trying to impress, she was simply helping because it was who she was. And though she didn't know it, her small act of compassion had just planted the seed for a choice that would change both of their lives. The father's voice cut through the hum of the ballroom. "Well? Who will it be?" he asked, his tone laced with expectation. The models straightened their posture, some flashing brighter smiles, certain they were moments away from being chosen. The crowd leaned in, eager to witness the boy's decision, a choice they assumed would align perfectly with the wealth and grandeur surrounding him. But the boy didn't move toward the glittering line of beauty. Instead, he stepped away, his small shoes tapping softly against the marble floor as he crossed the room. A murmur of confusion rippled through the guests. The father's brow furrowed, unsure of what his son was doing. The boy stopped in front of the maid, who was still holding an empty tray, her eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. He reached out, taking her work-worn hands gently in his. His voice was steady, though soft enough that everyone had to listen closely. "I choose her," he said, looking directly into her startled eyes. "Because beauty fades, but kindness never does." The word struck like a quiet thunder. The maid's lips parted, too stunned to speak, while gasps and whispers rippled across the room. Some guests smiled faintly, others exchanged puzzled looks. The models lowered their gazes, their practiced charm momentarily dimmed. And in that instant, the boy's choice was no longer just a selection, it was a statement that shattered the glittering illusion around them. For a moment, the father stood frozen, his expression unreadable. The weight of his son's words hung in the air, echoing louder than the soft music playing in the background. At first, a flicker of frustration crossed his face, this was not the choice he had envisioned, not the match that would uphold the image he had so carefully built. The crowd's whispers reached his ears, feeding the tension in his chest. But then, almost unwillingly, his eyes softened. In the maid's nervous stance and the boy's unwavering grip on her hands, he saw something he hadn't seen in years: sincerity untouched by ambition. A memory stirred, uninvited, the gentle smile of his late wife, a woman who had once loved him not for his fortune, but for who he was before wealth had hardened his heart. His gaze shifted to his son, and in that young face he recognized a strength he admired, the courage to see value where others did not. The models, still standing in their polished perfection, suddenly seemed like decorations in the background compared to the quiet humanity before him. The murmurs in the room grew softer, almost reverent, as if everyone could feel the shift in the air. The father's hand rose slowly, resting on the maid's shoulder. His voice, when it came, carried both pride and a trace of emotion he rarely showed. In that moment, he no longer saw his son as a boy making an innocent choice, he saw him as a man choosing what truly matters. The father's hand remained on the maid's shoulder, steady and warm. Her eyes shimmered with uncertainty, as if she couldn't quite believe what was happening. The boy still held her hands, his small smile carrying a confidence far beyond his years. Around them, the once curious crowd now stood in quiet awe, the glitter of the ballroom feeling softer, almost humbled. Finally, the father spoke, his deep voice resonating through the hall. "Welcome to the family," he said, each word deliberate, as though sealing something sacred. A faint gasp escaped the maid's lips, her head bowing slightly as tears welled up. For her, this was not a step into wealth, it was the acceptance she had never dared to dream of. The boy looked up at his father with gratitude, and the father returned the gaze with something even deeper: respect. In that golden hall, filled with all the symbols of luxury, the richest thing was not the chandeliers, the gowns, or the diamonds. It was the love and humanity radiating from a choice made with the heart. Guests who had come expecting a spectacle instead witnessed a lesson. Some smiled through misty eyes, others exchanged silent nods, as if reminded of something they had forgotten. The music swelled gently, and for the first time that evening, the father felt lighter, as though his son had not just chosen a mother, but had given him back a piece of his own soul. And in that moment, wealth finally meant something real.